everybody, this is Peter with 630 Bicycles, and today we're in the garage. All you need for this one is a few wrenches, Allen wrenches, a Phillips head screwdriver, and something to open the box and cut the packaging with, a knife or a pair of scissors. As far as the wrenches go, we need a 9mm, 10mm, 13mm, 14mm, and 15mm, or in this case today I'm going to be using adjustable crescent wrenches to show you that it can be done with just these simple tools. Also Allen wrenches, 4mm, 5mm, and 6mm. And then of course the Phillips screwdriver. Set these to the side and then we'll open the box. When you open the box, you'll see that the bicycle is packaged in there pretty compactly. Go ahead and pull it out. The bicycle arrives in a unit like this. You'll also find in there small parts box. We're going to open that first just to make sure that we know that everything that's in there. Okay, so the parts box. Parts box we have, I want to make you pay special attention to this part. This is called a quick release skewer. We'll go into more detail about this part, but this is very important that you focus on the quick release skewer right now because this is how we will attach the front wheel. It's important to note that you will not be using any tools at all to install the front wheel. So if it looks like you need to use a tool to install the front wheel, then something has gone wrong. We need to use the quick release skewer here, okay? Pedals. We have some tools are included to help with installation if you have no tools at all. It is better to have your own set of wrenches if you can. There's a multi-tool in there that will help you get by, but it's definitely not the most ideal tool you could use. Some reflectors and then a cosmetic part that covers a part called the headset. And we also have some touch-up paint here. The next step is to go ahead and remove the packaging. So I don't usually remove all the packaging. I like to leave some on to protect the bike. But to begin with, we'll go ahead and remove all the zip ties. And pull the front wheel out like this. We'll take the cardboard off. On the front wheel, there are two pieces of plastic packaging. One is this large circle like this. On the other side, there's a smaller piece. Be careful to pull that out straight out of the axle. The axle is hollow, actually. Sometimes the packaging can break off inside of that hollow axle if you're not careful. So we want that axle to be clear of any obstructions. So just be careful when you're pulling the packaging out not to leave anything in there. So I've undone the zip ties for the handlebars. Go ahead and take the fork here and turn it with the handlebars forward, 180 degrees. The forks are turned backwards for shipping. The way you can tell if they're correct is that the brakes will be in the very front of the bike now. Go ahead and remove the packaging from the stem, the handlebar stem, which is the part that holds the handlebars to the bike. There's a piece of, there's a plastic bag. There's also a tubular looking piece of plastic. This is packaging, so go ahead and discard that. And then just slip the handlebar stem into the bike. And we'll just leave it there for now. Get back to it later. Now I'm removing the zip tie from the forks. Now, we're about ready to install the front wheel. But what we need to do, and I'm going to show you a detail of this, is we need to be able to detach the two brakes from each other. This actually has a quick release item or feature on it, so they can be done very quickly. I'm going to do it right here. You won't be able to see very well, but then we'll do a close-up later to show you how. Just like this, and then the brakes separate from each other. This allows the pads to come apart from each other so that the tire can slip through. Otherwise, the brakes are too close. So they need to be close to the rim, but they're close for the rim, but they're too close to get the tire through. You can just reattach the brakes like this. So I'm going to go ahead and unattach them again, like that. As you can see, it takes about 1 second. It requires 0 tools. Let's grab that quick release skewer I told you about. It's a short rod, maybe about 6 inches long here. It has a lever and a nut on either end. We'll remove the nut, one of the springs. You can take the wheel. The wheel has a hollow axle. So you're going to go ahead and slide the quick release skewer through the hollow axle. Put the spring back on. It's conical, so you're going to put the smaller end of the cone in first, and then put the nut on loosely, like that. The tire on this bike is directional. At this level of riding, the direction just really doesn't matter for performance. However, for aesthetics, the correct way is for the direction of the pattern to be pointing forward. There's also an arrow indicator on the tire that should show you which direction. Yeah, it says drive and then points in that direction. The customary way for the quick release to go on is for the quick release skewer to be on the non-drive side of the bicycle. It really doesn't matter which side it goes on, but it does make it a little easier when you're facing the bicycle to be able to grasp the lever with your right hand if you're right-handed. So now that we have the quick release skewer in the axle and we have the brakes opened, released, we'll go ahead and pick the bike up, and we're going to set the fork right onto the axle of the wheel. And I'm going to go ahead and put the kickstand down, and the bike will just stand there for me while we go ahead and do the rest of the assembly. When you set the forks down onto the axle only has about maybe 1/8 of an inch of material on either end. That's what the fork rests on. It's also threaded. So a lot of people are unfamiliar with how the quick release works and what it looks like. It looks like there's not enough axle to be used, but you'll see with the quick release skewer, all it needs is that little bit of 1/8 inch of axle material for the fork to rest on. We'll go ahead and grasp that lever in the open position with your right hand. Turn the nut on the other side down until it starts to firm up, but not all the way, because now we're going to use the cam on the lever to actually secure the wheel. While you're doing this, you also want to make sure that the wheel is centered, because it is common for the wheel to want to either lean to the left or the right, especially when we have it in the kickstand like we do right now. Now I'm going to test it and try to close the lever. In this case, it felt perfect, actually. A lot of times you'll find that you've tightened the nut a little too tight, or maybe it's a little loose. Go ahead and open the lever again, and either tighten or loosen the nut a little bit, and then try again. It'll be a firm feeling when you are closing the lever. Usually it leaves an impression in the palm of your hand that will last a few seconds. That's an indicator of getting the right tension for the quick release. Then I will reattach the brakes like that. At this point, I like to put in the pedals because there's nothing else impeding me to reaching down to the lower part of the bike. I'm going to remove this packaging, get it out of my way. The pedals, it's important to note that there is a right pedal and a left pedal, and there's a reason for that. The right pedal has normal right-hand threads. The left pedal is reverse threaded, so it has left-hand threads. So when we put on the right pedal, it'll be righty-tighty, like normal, but the left pedal is lefty-tighty. Okay, so we'll go ahead and put the right pedal in on the right side. The right side of the bike is the side with the chain on it. It's the side that's on the right when you're actually riding the bike. when we're talking to customers on the telephone, I usually don't refer to the bike as left or right, because a lot of times customers like to refer to the bike facing the bike, which gives us the opposite orientation that we're used to. So I always refer to it either the drive or non-drive side of the bike. That clears it up. Like port and starboard on a boat. All right, and then for the left pedal, we'll put that one in. Again, this one is not righty-tighty, but lefty-tighty. Go ahead and screw that in. On both of these, after you get them in finger tight, go ahead and tighten them down with a 15mm wrench. I'm going to use my little adjustable here. Very good. Now let's go ahead and remove a little bit more packaging. Okay, let's go ahead and secure the rear rack now. There are 2 bolts that are already pre-installed in the bicycle. So you can go ahead and we'll take these out, we'll put the rack in the right place, and then put the bolts back in. These are 4mm. These are 4mm bolts, so get out your 4mm Allen wrench. Remove the bolts. Most of the hardware that you need, and there's not a lot of it, but what you do need is generally already on the bike. So then we'll put the rear rack into position and reinstall the bolts. Good common practice for the assembly of anything, including a bicycle, is to install all the bolts that you need somewhat loosely for a certain part before tightening any of them down. This will allow for a little bit of adjustment and wiggle room while you're getting everything in there correctly. Sometimes if you tighten down one bolt right away, it will really interfere with getting the other ones inserted. So I just have these in here loose. They've both gone through. Now I'm going to go ahead and tighten them both all the way down. There we go. Just check it. Feels good. Okay. Let's take out the piece of plastic from the seat tube. Let's go over here and get our seat and seat post. If there are any cyclists or other mechanics out there watching, yes, I'm calling this a seat, not a saddle. Our customers don't call these saddles, although that is the term commonly used in the cycling world. So also in a bike shop, it's common to go ahead and grease the seat post. I think that this is an unnecessary step for casual riders. What can happen is in the long term, if the bike is left out in the weather, or if you ride in extreme weather a lot, like more serious cyclists will do, there can be corrosion and the seat post can get stuck inside the frame. The grease actually has no functional purpose. It's just so that the part can be removed later on in case the bike has been left out in the weather. So now, to install the seat post correctly, there is a quick release seat post clamp. This guy is a little bit unfamiliar for some riders. It can actually be removed. I'll show it to you. It looks like this. It has a little bit of a lip on the top of it. That lets it rest right onto the seat tube. When the quick release is on there correctly, the quick release mechanism is to the rear of the bike, and the opening of the clamp lines up with the slot in the seat tube. The actual metal of the frame is slotted. This allows it to clamp around the seat post and hold the post firmly. So what we're going to do is go ahead and with the lever in the open position, just like we did on the wheel, we're going to have that in the open position, and then tighten the nut until we start to feel a little bit of resistance. You should still be able to get the seat post down in there. There we go. We're going to hold the seat post in the position that we like and also hold the nut, and then maybe tighten down a little bit more, and then I'm going to try and close the quick release clamp. That feels really good. When you close this cam, this lever has a cam on it. It has to be in a very specific position. Really, it doesn't work properly unless the lever is aligned with the body of the clamp itself. So it should come along quite nicely right along the body of the clamp. It's parallel with it and it nestles into it like two spoons. That's the proper way. Otherwise, the cam may not work properly, and it's easy actually to get so much torque on that quick release mechanism you can break it if you don't do it properly. This way there's no chance of breaking it. If you do it to the back or have the lever facing up or down, you'll probably break it, but to get the force that you need to hold the seat securely. I have this one angled a little bit to the right. I'm going to go ahead and adjust it so it's nice and straight how I like it. There we go. You can also adjust the angle of the seat if you don't like what you have. On this bike, it's a 6mm Allen wrench down here. Sorry. Yeah, 6mm. You can loosen this 6mm bolt down here, and you can adjust the angle of the seat and then retighten it. Okay, let's go to the handlebars and the handlebar stem. I'm going to remove this packaging here so I can see what I'm working with. You can remove this plastic at this point or not. We're going to be working with our 6mm Allen wrench. I like to do this from the front of the bicycle. I stand over the front wheel. Get the front wheel lined up in a nice straight position. At this point I'm off of the kickstand. I'm holding the bike up vertically. We're going to get the stem. This part is called the stem that holds the handlebar into the bike. The way the stem works, if I can pull this out, there's a wedge at the bottom of the stem. When we tighten this long stem bolt here, it's going to pull that wedge up along the angled bottom area of the stem, and it's going to jam, it's going to wedge into the steerer tube of the fork, and it's going to hold it in there just like that just with friction. So that's how that works. Sometimes if this part is too loose, it may spin around. You want it to be a little bit engaged already. See here, you can see it's just spinning like that and not engaging. You want it to be a little bit engaged on the angle of the stem before we go ahead and insert it into the head tube. I'm going to release the brake down here to give myself a little more room. Slide that in. Okay, so it's slid in like that. I'm going to stand over the wheel and line the stem up as best as I can just by eyeballing it. We will tighten down on the 6mm stem bolt. When it starts to get firm, we can make a little extra adjustment. I usually use one eye and then the other because they both seem to see things a little bit differently. Helps me get it lined up. You can also adjust the height of the stem. Just make sure that you never go above the minimum line, because I've seen quite a few of these break when people have them just too high. You're flirting with physics on that one. So let's go ahead and tighten the 6mm down. So most hardware on a bicycle is not like on a car where you just want to give it almost everything you got. With a bike, there's you have to finesse and get the right amount of torque on it. I always feel like with the stem bolt and an Allen wrench, just go ahead and give it everything you got. You really can't over tighten that one with a normal Allen wrench, even one that's longer than this one. In a shop, commonly they'll use one that's about maybe almost twice as long as this one for more leverage. Okay, we can also set the handlebar angle, which actually, now that I think about it, if we'd angled this earlier, we would have more cable room than we had before. You'll see what I mean. We're just going to tilt it up like this, just like that. It gives us more room on the cables. You can also see how nicely positioned the cables are now. There's really no real right answer as to how we position the handlebars here. It's whatever's comfortable. The position that I have right now is going to be what would be about typical, a good starting place. You may find for your own body, you may like them tilted backwards a little bit more, or even a little bit more forward. It's interesting with fitting bicycles, a lot of people don't realize, and we didn't until we really started selling these and trying to get people fit properly, is it's not just height, it's inseam, it's also what they call the length of your trunk. Torso, but they call it trunk, and also the length of your arms. The length of your neck can even come into play, because that can contribute to height, but not necessarily to your inseam. And so there are a lot of considerations. So these bikes are pretty much universal I think the sizing we have for this one is from about 5'4" or 5'5" up to 6 feet. Because on this particular bike, it has a suspension seat post. This makes the seat post so it can't be lowered as low as a conventional seat post. If you use a conventional seat post, though, you can get this seat even lower. I'll go ahead and set the seat right now in the lowest position, just so we can see what it does. That's as low as the seat gets on this one. With a regular seat post, it could go down another 2 inches. All right, we're actually done with the basic assembly at this point. I missed a step. In the parts box, there's a cosmetic part in here. It's not a functional part. And it's actually common for our customers as well as myself to miss this step. There's a little part in there that looks like a silver ring. It's actually going to go in here and cover the top part of what's called the headset. Let's go ahead and do that now. So with the stem out, you can take the headset cover there and just place it on the headset, and then slip the stem back in there. There we go. And then with the headset, you stand over the wheel, align the stem with the front wheel, and then tighten that down with the 6mm Allen wrench. And go ahead and give this one as much tightening as you can. With most hardware on a bicycle, there needs to be some finessing. You don't want to go as hard as you can. But with this particular bolt here, go ahead and tighten it as much as you can with that Allen wrench. Same thing with the bolts that clamp the handlebar to the stem. The 3 6mm bolts here on the top. Okay, great. This is the 7-speed, so we're going to also adjust the handbrakes and the gears. Just for the brakes, we will need a 5mm Allen wrench and possibly a screwdriver. We'll see if we need it or not. Let's go ahead and hook up the front brakes again. So remember, we'll take that silver noodle, pull on it like this. It's a little tight, actually. I can't quite get it. I'm going to go ahead and loosen this cable here. Give myself a little more room. With my 5mm, I'll loosen that pinch bolt. Now it's loose in here. You can just go ahead and slide that noodle right into the tab. Very easy. Easily done. We'll squeeze these together. I like to squeeze them all the way with one hand and then let it out just a little bit. You don't need a lot of clearance. You just need some clearance. You just need for the rim to go by without rubbing on the brakes. But the main thing that we're really looking for is that when we do have this adjusted, that it feels nice on the brake lever. There's a good little point on this one that just happened. I'm going to loosen this up a little bit because the cable slipped out of the brake lever. You'll notice on the body of the brake lever there's a slot in the front, and then there's a barrel adjuster and a lock ring. Those are also slotted. You can line all three of those slots up like this, pull back on the cable housing, the black tubing, and then slide that cable into the slot and then let it snap back into place, okay? So now we'll redo. It's really good that happened. You guys got to see that. That happens occasionally. By the way, this is a really great way to loosen the cable from the brake if you need to. You can just, again, pull the cable housing out this way, slide it through those slots, and when you pull back on the brake lever, it'll unhook like this. So now the cable's free. We also have a video specifically on this so you can get closer detail shots. If you like, that's on our assembly page. Okay, so we'll go ahead and tighten that back up again. See how we like the feel of it. There we go. I'm going to squeeze the lever. It's a little on the loose side. I'm going to take a little more slack out of the cable. Squeeze a few more times. That feels nice. Let's adjust the pads themselves. The pads should be flush and lined up with the rim. The most important thing is that they have a lot of contact with the rim and are in no danger of touching the tire. I like to just push the pad right up against the rim all the way and then tighten it down in position. Also, a lot of times on any bike, the brakes can squeal a little bit. If that is happening to you, the way to fix that is that instead of having the brakes exactly parallel, they should be what's called toed in. They should be a little bit pigeon-toed so that the front part of the brake contacts the rim before the rest of the brake pad. Okay, that's a nice adjustment there. Give it a few squeezes. Now let's go ahead and pick the front part of the bike up and spin the wheel. In this case, it's dragging. It's dragging on the right brake pad. Okay, so we need to center the brakes. It's very common. So what you do is on each brake arm is a small centering screw. You want to go ahead and tighten the centering screw of the pad that's touching. Again, find the pad that's touching and then turn the centering screw on that side inward. It sounds a little bit backwards, but that's how you do it. Then you want to give the brake a few more squeezes and then test it again. You can see it spins nicely now. It's centered. We'll do the same process on the back, on the rear brake. I'm going to adjust the pads, make sure they're lined up with the rim. Great. Nice. Let's see how the tension is. That one feels good right out of the box, so I'm going to leave it. It does need to be centered though. I can see it's dragging a little bit on the left pad when I spin the wheel. Yep, just a little bit. So since the left pad is touching the rim, I'm going to turn that centering screw inward. Give the pad a few squeezes, and then we'll test it again. You can see it's spinning freely now. Let's go ahead and adjust this shifter here, the Shimano Nexus 3-speed. This one is actually already perfectly adjusted as I would expect, which means that when we're in second gear here at the shifter, we can see there's a little yellow dot, and it's between the two yellow lines. Now, that's a good reference point, and at this point, putting it in second up here, if that dot is in between the lines, then it should also be in second gear on the hub as well. And so this one should be fine. If not, it's very easy to do, to adjust. You can just get a 10mm wrench, and you're going to loosen the little lock nut against the body of the shifter, and then you can adjust the barrel adjuster here, which has a knurled knob, either with your fingers or you can use a wrench if it's a little tight, to adjust that yellow dot into the center of those lines. Now the lines again are just a basic thumb rule. Generally that should work, but sometimes the proper adjustment is actually such that the dot is outside the lines. So the main thing is that you make sure that you make the gears work. If this part's not working, again, Shimano is arguably the finest component manufacturer in the world, or at least top 3. So if you're mad at that, talk to Shimano. I was just kidding. Talk to us and we'll fix it. But